Pete Alonso is headed back to the Mets, and Jack Flaherty is signing with the Tigers. Let's discuss on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Friday, February 7th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers. Let's break down the latest news from the week. And we got some big moves here. Pete Alonso is headed back to the Mets on a 2-year, $54 million deal. He'll get $30 million in 2025 and has an opt-out after the season. I think this was sorely needed on both sides. Obviously, Alonso wanted to go back to the Mets. The Mets really needed to lengthen their lineup as well. Chris, as we said on our first base preview, this felt like the best possible landing spot for Pete Alonso. The ADP is currently 43.6. Do you think it starts to rise a little bit now that he's back in New York?
I don't really think it should, but I think it might, because this is what we always see when players signs. There's a little inflation. And look, it's a great landing spot. It's actually a tough place to hit, but Pete Alonso's power has played up in Citi Field before, so I don't think we worry too much about it. And obviously, hitting behind Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, I mean, Pete Alonso's career high in RBI is 131. I think he did it 3 years ago. That's within reach if he stays healthy and gets back to hitting 40 homers. Now, it's a little bit more of an all fields approach for a guy who does not generate 92 mile an hour average exit velocities. So it's a pretty thin margin for error. And we've seen that over the past couple of seasons. Batting average really low 2 years ago. Last year, only 34 homers. That's not great. And so, I hope he gets closer to 40. I think that's a reasonable expectation. He's got a lot at stake this year again, because he's going to be looking for that $100 million contract next offseason. I think he's fine in the 40 to 50 range. I don't know if I would want to pay a top 40 price for him, though.
Some other hitters going in that range of ADP, Alonso or Corey Seager?
Seager.
What about Alonso or Jose Altuve?
Altuve.
And Alonso or Kyle Schwarber, who is utility only?
I think I have Alonso higher. I'm not. What did I say on the full podcast? I should remember that. Alonso. Yeah. I'll go with Alonso because Kyle Schwarber is going to be a detriment in batting average. He's not going to get as many RBI. It's the runs will be really good because he's a leadoff hitter, but I think I would go with Alonso.
The other side of this is that Mark Vientos will now stick at third base for the Mets. It's bad news for some of those ancillary pieces we thought might be competing for a job. Ronnie Mauricio, Brett Beatty, Luis Angel Acuna. Do you plan to boost any other Mets now in this lineup, Chris? Brandon Nimmo's and Mark Vientos's, who are hitting behind Pete Alonso, but man, the top 6 in that lineup looks really, really good now.
Yeah, I don't think so, just because everybody besides Lindor and Soto is probably just going to move down a spot in the lineup. So I don't know if Alonso's that much of a tide lifting all boats here. It is with Vientos, narrows the margin for error, and we have him all as a bust candidate, and I think there are a lot of ways it can go wrong. One thing I will point out that we didn't talk about on the third base preview that somebody pointed out to me, he is out of minor league options. So it's unlikely he gets sent to AAA. They're going to give him a longer leash because of that. But now they've got one spot that Vientos can play, basically, I guess DH as well. And Mauricio could be, a viable replacement if Vientos struggles, or Acuna. And so it does make the chances of him losing that job a little higher, although the DH spot is currently pretty open as well if they needed it. So I don't think it changes too much for anybody but Alonso.
Show some respect to Jesse Winker, the DH of the New York.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
I feel home when I see the faces that remember my own. When I'm with my friends, I feel home.
Welcome back in FBT Express. Jack Flaherty is headed back to the Detroit Tigers on a 2-year, $35 million deal, which to me is shocking. He didn't get more years and more money, but unfortunately, I guess that's the market now for Jack Flaherty. He'll make $25 million in 2025 and does have an opt-out after the season. This was maybe the best landing spot for Flaherty. In his 18 starts with Detroit before getting traded, .295 ERA, .96 whip, 11 K per nine, 14% swinging strike rate. Dealt with some injuries midseason. He regressed once he got traded to the Dodgers. Chris, I don't think Flaherty gets all the way back to this level in Detroit, but I do think he will be slightly better than the pitcher we saw in LA.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with this is just the contract he got maybe tells us how teams view him. And look, I think I know baseball, but I think most of the people running professional baseball teams know baseball a little better than I do. So the fact that they weren't willing to give him much more than Frankie Montas got this offseason is a little concerning. That being said, the landing spot in Detroit is awesome. We've already seen it in action. He was great there last year. Chris Federer is a very good pitching coach, and he's gotten a lot out of guys like Jack Flaherty. So I think there are reasons to be optimistic here. It's a great home park as well. I'm moving him back up. He was about SP 40 in my rankings. I moved him back up to around 31, 32. There's a range with like Tyler Glasnow and Spencer Strider, Shohei Ohtani, all these guys who have workload concerns that Flaherty doesn't. If Flaherty stays healthy, he's going to throw 170, 180 innings. Whether he'll stay healthy and effective is a big question, but I'm okay putting him ahead of those guys.
Yeah, ideally, Chris, for fantasy, what would you want Flaherty as on your roster? Your SP3, your SP4?
I think ideally an SP3 or SP4, but the way I approach the position, a lot of the times I'm taking one anchor SP in like the second or third round range, usually Zach Wheeler or Tarek Skubal. And then I'm waiting on the position until like the 8th, 9th round. And Flaherty, I can see a world in which Flaherty's my number 2, and I hit the position a couple times in that same tier and try to make up for what I would lack in a sure thing with projectable upside. That might be the way I would go. So I think it's a viable SP2, but you have to put in a lot more work after that, preferably an SP3.
The ADP for Jack Flaherty, 133.2, SP40 off the board. Chris, would you rather have Flaherty or Shane McClanahan?
Flaherty.
What about Flaherty or Carlos Rodon?
Flaherty.
Flaherty or Kodai Senga?
I don't really know what to do with Senga. We've seen one season from him, plus one start last year where he looked awesome, but he just could not stay on the field last year. I don't know how repeatable what he did as a rookie was, so I will give Flaherty the edge. Similar upside, though.
Yeah. The Tigers' updated rotation, by the way, Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Reese Olson, Alex Cobb, and according to Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic, Jackson Jobe seems likely to claim an opening day rotation spot. So that's great news for Jobe. And this Tigers rotation looks pretty fun, man. So
they got depth. Casey Mize and Matt Manning could step up if needed. There's some guys there, but that Jackson Jobe note is very exciting, especially if you're in a head-to-head points league, because he will be RP eligible to open the season. Actually won't be SP eligible until he makes 5 starts. So he is the highest upside SPARP on the board this year. I think he should be the number 1 SPARP, probably ahead of Bowden Francis, although Francis may be a little safer. Jobe, the upside is huge. He could be an ace. This is outside of Roki Sasaki. He's the top pitching prospect in baseball. I'm very excited to see him.
All right. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.